cherish close partnerships, a close partnership with the ECOWAS Commission as well as EBID. It's a relationship that will continue to deepen in the quest for goals of mutual interest as we strive to develop our continent. I have been involved in the organization of trade and investment forums. I'm all too familiar with the challenges associated with organizing events of this nature and magnitude. So I would therefore like to congratulate the organizers for the dedication to bring these events to fruition. Ladies and gentlemen, the choice of the theme, infrastructure deficit, pooling resources towards the development of sustainable infrastructure, is particularly apt in the context of the ever-changing economy we confront today and the challenges we as a continent continue to face 6 decades after attaining independence. Today, Africa sits at a critical juncture in the context of a fast-changing global geopolitical environment. Africa's role in this dynamic environment is multifaceted and increasingly significant. The continent's wealth of resources has made it a focal point for global competition and investment by major powers seeking to secure access to these vital commodities. Our location at the crossroads of major sea routes connecting Europe, Asia, and the Americas gives the continent strategic importance for global trade and maritime security. As we witnessed recently, control over key ports and waterways can influence international shipping and energy flows. Our young and fast-growing population presents immense opportunities as the continent's youthful population could drive economic growth and innovation. By 2050, it is projected that 1 in 4 people globally will be African. African countries are increasingly recognizing the importance of regional integration to address common challenges and leverage collective strengths. Initiatives such as the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and integration under the regional economic communities promotes economic cooperation, political stability, and sustainable development. Distinguished guests, as we stand at a critical juncture in the trajectory of our continent, we continue to grapple with a challenge that threatens to impede our collective advancement. And that is a persistent infrastructure deficit. Infrastructure, which forms the backbone of any thriving economy, serving as the arteries through which trade flows and communities connect, continues to hinder our development ambitions. The consequences of this deficit is profound and far-reaching. The infrastructure deficit estimated, especially in terms of financing, is between 130 and 170 billion US annually. This deficit of infrastructure costs Africa an estimated 2% of its GDP each year. Deficit infrastructure costs Africa an estimated 2% of its GDP each year. But it also cuts our productivity by as much as 40%. These sort of statistics underscore the critical need for substantial investments and strategic development infrastructure across the continent. Insufficient energy infrastructure means that over 600 million Africans do not have access to electricity. This not only jeopardizes our ability to meet the growing energy needs of our population, but it also undermines efforts to industrialize. In West Africa, it is estimated that only 30% of the population, it is only 30% of West African population that have access to electricity. Inadequate healthcare and educational infrastructure also impede access to essential services, perpetuating cycles of poverty and disenfranchisement. The transport infrastructure we inherited continues to contribute to the marginalization of Africa in global trade, where we account for less than 3% of global trade, despite accounting for 18% of the world's population. It entrenches the trend of reliance on external partners who account for over 80% of our trade. We will continue to rely on them for economic fortunes. In West Africa, transport costs are estimated to be about 100% higher than other parts of the developing world. Road access rates are only about 34%, compared to over 50% in other parts of the developing world. Our vast water resources in West Africa are substantially unutilized. However, and despite this daunting challenge, there is still cause for optimism. I don't want it to look like it's all gloom and doom. The solution lies in our ability to pool our resources and channel our collective ingenuity towards the development of sustainable infrastructure. So this is not merely an opportunity to address the pressing needs of today, but it's also an imperative if we want to lay the foundation for a more prosperous future. Pooling resources towards the development of sustainable infrastructure requires a multifaceted approach. It demands innovative financing schemes that mobilize public and private capital towards infrastructure projects and deliver long-term value. It necessitates robust regulatory frameworks that incentivize investment in sustainable infrastructure while safeguarding the interests of all stakeholders. It calls for the collaboration and partnership across borders, as the challenges we face transcend national borders and national boundaries and require a coordinated response. I'm therefore pleased that this investment forum is holding to provide the opportunity not only to discuss investment opportunities in the ECOWAS region, but also to explore the vast economic potential of African integration and the opportunities under the AFCFTA. And indeed, the AFCFTA will have an immense impact on African economies, as well as on trade and investment. The operationalization of the AFCFTA has brought into sharp focus the need for a systematic approach and practical steps to scale up the infrastructure and industrial base in ECOWAS and to strategically position the member states to take full advantage of the opportunities that the AFCFTA offers. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I commend ECOWAS for creating the ECOWAS Fund for Development and financing for the transport and energy sectors, which is dedicated to financing regional infrastructure, as well as I also commend their bid for the innovative products in this area. But also, we at Afreximbank are acutely aware of the need to take full advantage of the AFCFTA, and that is why African integration through the promotion of intra-African trade and AFCFTA implementation is the bank's strategic arrowhead and guides our interventions across the continent and indeed in the ECOWAS region. Our focus is to develop infrastructure that will culminate in the strengthening of regional value chains, to offer member states an opportunity to use regional advantages and boost competitiveness, diversify product supply, and export products with higher value added. It is through this lens that Afreximbank support towards infrastructure should be viewed. Whilst there are many projects and initiatives that Afreximbank has supported in this area, allow me to just mention a few that the bank is spearheading in the ECOWAS region in order to bridge the infrastructure deficit. Through our project and asset-based finance program, Afreximbank has approved more than $3 billion in the support of infrastructure in the last 4 years alone. Among others, this includes a 300-megawatt combined cycle gas power plant in Senegal, the establishment of a floating dry dock at the Takoradi port in Ghana, road construction between Côte d'Ivoire, Mali, and Senegal, and the development of a $3 billion complete LNG train in Nigeria. Through our project preparation facility, which works with project promoters to help ensure projects reach bankability stage. We have approved $18.1 million, which will bring on stream total access of $7.4 billion. In ECOWAS, we are working with the Ghana Railway Corporation to develop the 299-kilometer Western Railway Corridor. From a regional integration perspective, the project is aligned with ECOWAS commitments to connect all member railway systems, and the project is estimated at $2.1 billion. The reason I mention all of these projects that we're handling is to give an audience a big view of what we're doing in Afreximbank, just in case they do not know, as we remain available to support the deal room sections of this forum. I digress. But we're also supporting Nigeria's oldest and largely privately owned indigenous shipyard repair company, which intends to undertake a modernization and expansion program of its shipyard. The shipyard will encompass modern amenities such as extensive paint and carpentry workshops, specialized equipment, and warehouses. When fully implemented, the project will be the first ISO 9001 2015 compliant shipyard in the ECOWAS sub-region. The project is estimated at $100 million. To overcome the lack of adequate infrastructure investment that will boost the continent's industrialization, Afreximbank has prioritized the development and implementation of industrial parks and special economic zones. These parks leverage off a member country's comparative advantages, but it also takes into consideration infrastructure deficits in these member countries. In the ECOWAS region, these are primarily for light manufacturing and agro-processing. We at Afreximbank have committed $2 billion to support the development and implementation of these industrial parks across the continent. To accelerate the implementation of these industrial parks, we have partnered with Arise Integrated Industrial Platforms, Arise IIP, a Pan-African developer and operator of world-class industrial parks. Under this collaboration, which involves our impact equity fund in putting in equity in Arise, we also finance the development of industrial parks, while Arise acts as the developer and operator of the industrial parks. Beyond our equity, we also put project financing. To date, we are supporting development and implementation of several of these parks in the ECOWAS region, including in Benin, which is in Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, and Adetikope, or Pierre, here in Togo. When fully implemented, these projects are expected to crowd in about $5 billion in investments, enhance food security, create quality jobs, and enable the manufacture of value-added goods that can enter into regional and global value chains. We have also launched the African Engineering, Procurement, and Construction, EPC initiative, at the recently concluded third edition of the Intra-African Trade Fair that held in Cairo in November last year. This initiative will ensure that African companies are able to tap into the $60 billion annual infrastructure spending, the bulk of which goes to foreign companies. These foreign companies have an edge over African competitive because they are usually backed by their domestic export credit agencies and global banks. China is the largest foreign investor in Africa's EPC market. However, we firmly believe in a homegrown approach to tackling Africa's intractable challenges by championing African solutions to African problems. So upon this basis that the bank created this EPC initiative, the concerted effort by the bank has facilitated the award of EPC contracts worth over $12 billion in just 5 years to African EPC contractors. Esteemed companies such as El Sweet, Orascom, Arab Contractors, Hassan Alam, Koira, BTB, Gitter, BTB, Gico Press, Kojeb, are among the few that have emerged as prominent beneficiaries of this initiative, and they demonstrate that African expertise can be deployed to support African infrastructure development. The EPC initiative is poised to set new benchmarks and catalyze African-led investment for African-led growth, especially in the area of infrastructure. We're investing in transport infrastructure, including railway, road, and maritime. As I mentioned above, Afreximbank and its technical partner, TELO-DB, have pioneered a groundbreaking intervention that enables the bank to support the development, implementation, and operation of railways across the continent. Under this novel approach, Debt sizing is premised on the availability of long-term take-or-pay offtake agreements, which are backed by the freight volumes transported along a trade corridor. And as I mentioned before, this approach is being piloted in Ghana on the Western Railway Corridor. Tapping into our extensive global and African network, Afreximbank also arranged a 300 million euro syndicated facility for Côte d'Ivoire state-owned Port Autonome Abidjan a couple of years back to enable the company expand facilities at the Abidjan port and strengthen the position of the Abidjan port as a gateway for many ECOWAS countries to regional and international markets. The syndication, in the context of pooling resources, demonstrated the potential for pooling African capital, with Afreximbank serving as both mandated lead arranger as well as a lender. Other lenders in that project, permit me to call them out, are Bank Atlantic Côte d'Ivoire Africa Finance Corporation, Société Générale. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, we're investing in Afreximbank massively into the ECOWAS region. The total active portfolio of the bank in the ECOWAS region stands at $13.6 billion US. The bank supports infrastructure and industrialization-related sectors or industrial-related sectors in the ECOWAS region, and our portfolio stands at, for those sort of investments, stands at $4.6 billion. And while the bank has increased its support to the ECOWAS region and the rest of the continent, bridging Africa's infrastructure deficit and infrastructure financing gap requires pooling resources at a scale to support financing infrastructure and industrial developments. Pooling resources towards the development of sustainable infrastructure is essential, as it allows us to maximize the impact of our investments and ensure that the infrastructure projects are implemented efficiently and effectively. By combining our resources, we can access the necessary funding and expertise to tackle large-scale projects that will be beyond the reach of individual countries or even individual banks. For instance, through our syndications program, Afreximbank has been able to leverage $5 for every $1 we have invested. Our comprehensive guarantee program also provides comfort to investors seeking to invest in Africa and crowds in both foreign and African direct investments into strategic sectors, including infrastructure. Sorry about that. The bank is also collaborating with the African Union and NEPAD to support the implementation program for infrastructure development in Africa, PIDA. This will foster greater cooperation and integration among African countries, allowing pooling of foreign and African, as well as public and private sector resources for infrastructure development.